take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers.
And let's fucking get into it, man. We had a hell of an episode.
Woo! 2 hours of damn near flawless television.
Yeah.
I thought.
And once I started writing down my recap, there was one thing that I thought of. I was like, this probably didn't meet the standards of the rest of the show, but we'll get to that. I mean, absolute fucking bangers last night. What a hell of a show. And we knew it had to be, if you were going to move up the title match to, a week and a half essentially before the pay-per-view, almost 2 weeks, we knew that you'd have to bring some heat because you're probably going to get over 1 million viewers. And you got to bring your A game, and these motherfuckers brought it last night. So, but before we get into that, let's talk about some of the backstage stuff and some of the rumors that are going around. There's been a lot of backstage talk in the last week or two about AEW. And some that broke, I guess it was this morning, about Eddie Kingston and Sammy Guevara, which was news to me. Apparently, Eddie's already served a couple weeks suspension for some shit that happened backstage between he and Sammy.
Yeah, he had that promo where he called out Sammy asking for a match at the pay-per-view. And then we have literally seen nothing about it. Sammy's been wrestling. He's been in a little mini program with Dante Martin. Eddie's been nowhere to be found. Turns out it's because Eddie was serving a suspension. Because, and I think the video is on YouTube.
That motherfucker.
I think the video's on YouTube for people to look at. But sounds like Sammy cut an in-ring promo accepting the match from Eddie. But he called Eddie a fat piece of shit. And I guess Eddie correctly did not take too kindly to that, and they had a conversation backstage. I guess Eddie got in his face. Sammy smiled about it, and Eddie either swung or he pie-faced him or pushed him. Those details are kind of murky, but something physical happened. Eddie, I guess, owned up to it to Dave Meltzer. He was like, yeah, I did it, like, I'm in the wrong, but that's kind of the only details he had. So yeah, listen, all this, and we'll get into more as we talk about these matches, a lot of the other backstage stuff that's happening. I don't know. All this backstage stuff is starting to pop up at once. It's been kind of quiet, and now literally, I guess it feels like within the last 2 weeks, these dirt sheets would make it seem like the place behind the curtain is on fire, and everybody's fist fighting each other, or about to fist fight each other. I don't know. To me, this kind of just seems like two guys had a disagreement. One guy took it too far. You can't put your hands on somebody, and that's that. But, like, the way I look at it, I don't know how you feel about it, but the way I look at it is, like, this isn't anything new in wrestling. This isn't, like, WWE had these stories. It's just that maybe they were better about keeping them under wraps, but there's tons of leaks out there that happen during the WWE. Our guy here in Huntsville, Conrad, he's literally built a podcast empire based on this exact same thing of these guys telling these stories that happened backstage and all the bullshit that they put up with and the people they didn't like and the people they liked and all the shit they had to go through and the fist fights and all this stuff. Like,
yeah, it was just before you had shit like this reporting basically live as it happened every day.
Right, and Twitter has changed all this.
Yeah.
Because now people just get on there, boom, 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 this happened. But like this, people acting like this is a big deal or like this is a bad sign for AEW or AEW is on the verge of crumbling because all of the backstage stuff is becoming too chaotic. I mean, it just kind of seems like this is what happens to any young business. They have growing pains. I don't think they expected to be this successful this quickly.
Yeah.
And shit like this happens.
Yeah, I mean, and what you said this earlier when we were talking off mic, you were like, look, if this shit is happening backstage and we're getting the quality shows we're getting, who the fuck cares what's happening backstage?
Yeah, the only thing that really should matter to fans is the 2 hours on Wednesday, the hour on Friday, and the 4 hours for the pay-per-view 4 times a month. That's it. Whatever.
Year, yeah.
It's all the quality in front of the camera. And this isn't even unique to professional wrestling. I was thinking today when all this was coming out, Rogue One, the Star Wars movie, there were all kinds of reports coming out about that shoot, about, oh my God, they're reshooting stuff. Oh, is it going to be any good? Turns out the movie was fantastic.
It's one of the best fucking Star Wars movies.
So, like, water under the bridge. Doesn't matter. These guys are going to get over it. They'll probably put on another good program. Maybe they have a match at the pay-per-view. Maybe they don't. Maybe you do have to punish Eddie a little bit and take him off the pay-per-view. And, punish Sammy to some extent, too. Sammy isn't
He's
not at fault here.
Not at fault, yeah.
We talk about this all the time. I think we brought it up a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Britt Baker. When you're doing a promo, you have to elevate your opponent, elevate yourself, elevate the match. You can't call your opponent a fat piece of shit, because then you just beat a fat piece of shit or you lost to a fat piece of shit. It doesn't do anything for anybody. And so Eddie is rightly upset in that case. Like, that's not what you do. And, I guess he didn't like the way Sammy took it. And Sammy seems like he could be a little bit arrogant. I mean, just...
Yeah, I mean... I know he's playing a character on TV, but... he does definitely come off that way. And he's young. He's got the looks. He's got the talent. Why wouldn't you be at least a little bit arrogant, right?
Right.
I mean, if I looked like that, if I was cut like that, I'd flaunt that shit too.
And, I mean, he's in wrestling. All these guys and women in wrestling have egos.
Sure. Comes
with the job territory. So, like, I think a lot of this stuff has been overblown. But, that is the era in which we live in, where the backstage becomes so transparent and every little molehill gets turned into a mountain, and every little brush fire gets turned into a fucking five alarm fire where the tower is on fire and everybody's coming to, like, it's whatever. It's nothing.
So there was there was a mandatory meeting before the taping last night. Tony Khan, and he had his EVPs, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks there, and Tony Schiavone supposedly spoke, and Pat Buck spoke, and there's a lot of people like, oh, they had to call this emergency meeting, they had to do this. Sure, but I mean, they also just had major changes backstage with like personnel, and all these people got all these new different positions, and there's a new chain of command, so why wouldn't you have a meeting? Just because they had a meeting and all this shit came out last week about distractions with Punk backstage and Punk's behavior and causing tensions in the locker room and this, that, and the other. I mean, it could be nothing more than, hey, we're just having this meeting because there's new fucking protocols that you got to follow.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that has any kind of office job, any kind of corporate job, this is run-of-the-mill stuff. We have meetings all the time, once a week, if not twice a week, about stuff.
Yeah.
Just updating everybody on things. And in terms of the Punk stuff, look, you don't have to like everybody you work with. Like, there are egos involved in all this stuff. The only thing, like we talked about, the only thing that matters is what's getting put out there in front of the camera. And again, we both think, I think that the Punk stuff is a little bit of a work. If it didn't start out that way, it sure has felt like it's eased into that kind of territory. So, I've seen some people online be like, oh my God, all this backstage AE drama is causing me to not like the product. And, like, my advice would be, like, if that's you, just don't read that shit.
Yeah. You can unfollow that shit on Twitter.
Just enjoy the show. Enjoy what it was last night. Like, just kick your feet up and enjoy some pro wrestling. Like, AEW does that for you. Now, I get a kick out of the backstage stuff because, like I said, I think that there's a little bit of working going on. And so you have this narrative that's being molded in multiple kind of stages, where the in front of the camera, behind the scenes, I think they're approaching this kind of new era of how can we tell these pro wrestling stories in a pro wrestling that's been an art form that's been kind of stagnant really since its inception, right? There really hasn't been a lot of, outside of the scope of it and putting it in bigger arenas, putting it on television, it really is no different than what it was kind of in the 80s. The moves are different, the pace is different, but it's really kind of, the stories have been told the same way, really. So I think it's kind of neat that if this is indeed what they're doing, that they're kind of engaging in this new form of how do we get these narratives out here in front of people. Now, also, on the flip side of that, all this shit could be a shoot, and it could be. Half the locker room can't stand the other half of the locker room.
Right. I mean, there's definitely some guys that don't like each other. There's
Sure.
definitely some ladies that don't like each other. Supposedly Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa can't stand each other either.
Now that I believe.
Yeah.
Because you feel that tension when they're on screen.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into more of that when we talk about Thunder Rosa. But yeah, just whatever. I think these dirt sheets try to just, you got to take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I wonder too. I just started thinking about this while we were talking just now. But do you think some of it is just exaggeration from the dirt sheet's sake, just because like everybody's fucking on like Triple H's ass, loving him right now, and how there's such a better mood backstage at WWE and this, that, and the other? Do you think that maybe it's just like, oh, well, we got to stir up some shit?
Well, you got to feed into the narratives, right? It's no different than anything else. Like a lot of the social media is driven by clicks, right? So what's the big narrative with WWE right now? Triple H has taken over. Hope, optimism is flooding that locker room. Everybody loves that product. What's the grand narrative with AEW right now? CM Punk is a piece of shit backstage. Everybody doesn't like each other. So then you have to run in those lanes that have been created now in terms of driving your social media. And it's like anything else, man. People gossip. That's how these dirt sheet guys are getting it. They have people in that locker room that like to gossip to these guys and talk. And, yeah, shit gets exaggerated. It's really just a game of telephone. It filters through one person. Well, I heard this. So-and-so heard this. So-and-so told me this. Like, that's how these things come up. So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But again, like, if it's not affecting the product, what does it matter? You can have these sort of you can create good art, I think, out of sort of a combative kind of energy. Now, what you hope doesn't happen is that combative energy ends up poisoning everything else, to where you have people just be like, I can't fucking work here. I got to go. And they get out. And, to some extent, that maybe is what happened with Cody. But, I mean, this is people butting heads. It's been the story of pro wrestling since there's been pro wrestling. Guys not wanting to lose to certain guys. Guys not wanting to lose in their hometown. I mean, these are...
Yeah.
Brett and Sean didn't like each other. Brett didn't want to lose in Toronto. Like, this is pro wrestling. It goes back.
Yeah.
There's nothing new.
We got a loaded ass show, so I say let's get into the segments. We probably really want. Sometimes we'll skip some if they didn't really play into any overall narrative or arc, but I think pretty much all of these do, with the exception of one, which we still need to touch on. It's got part of a narrative. Anyway, we're just gonna skip Rampage. Rampage was pretty garbage last Friday. We're coming in hot with Garcia, Jericho, and then Danielson comes out to interrupt the two of those guys. I texted you last week. I was like, man, Garcia is acting his ass off, and he did it again last night. This dude comes out, and he doesn't have to fucking wrestle. He just puts on a performance. You see there's a lot of acting in wrestling and in in promos, and people have interactions in the ring, and it's all exaggerated. You gotta play it up. So, I get that for part of the it's a whole in theater. You have to over exaggerate things for the people in the back, right? Because they're not right up in the front seats and the good seats. You don't have to do that as much, when you're shooting a TV show or a film, because the camera's right in your face and you don't have to be as exaggerated. But I think Garcia is doing some of the best fucking work right now that doesn't involve wrestling. That dude is so convincing. Like, he went through all these fucking emotions last night. He was like, he's pissed off, he's hurt, he's sad, he's fucking fired up. Like he plays the I'm sad / I feel a little beat up upon. He plays that really well. I mean, he's just fucking killing it right now. And I thought, it was kind of weird to me to start off with this segment, because we had a promo start off the last show with Punk, and one of the things you and I talked about recently was how with WWE, there's fucking 15 minutes of promos and shit before there's even a wrestling match. And usually within 2 to 3 minutes, somebody's fighting in AEW. And so it's a little weird that they did this the last 2 weeks, but it was a solid opener.
And what a spot for Garcia to be put in, because, like you mentioned at the top, we know we're getting a CM Punk Jon Moxley championship match. It's going to be a lot of eyeballs. And what do they start the show with? You got an established star in Chris Jericho. You got an established star in Bryan Danielson. And you got Garcia, who's an up-and-comer. And who ends up stealing the show? It's fucking Daniel Garcia. And I told you this before we started rolling. Everything that we've wanted to see from Jungle Boy these past few weeks, Garcia did what we wanted to see from Jungle Boy. Like, with these young guys, I think what you want to see from a talent position, all these dudes are talented in the ring, right? They can do the moves. Becoming a superstar in pro wrestling has never been about the moves. It's, can you convey emotion? Can you get the people either to love you or hate you? Can you make them believe that what you're saying is how you really feel, even though you're playing a part? And Garcia knocked this out of the park. Like you said, he was intense. He was angry. He had heartfelt emotion.
He was conflicted.
He felt conflicted. Like, it was just perfect stuff. And I love this. You know, we joked last week about, I guess, Danielson and Jericho are going to fight for the custody of Garcia. Turns out it's exactly what's going to happen. And this was kind of like, you know, for any people out there that are the product of divorce, this felt like two divorced parents, you know, trying to pull the child to their side or the other.
Yeah.
And like you said, Garcia did such a good job being conflicted. I love the shit-eating grin from Danielson when Garcia pushed Jericho down. Love the reaction shot from Jericho looking at Garcia wide-eyed and shocked. Like, everything about this was perfect. And like you said, it didn't get too hokey at all. It didn't get too long.
Yeah, because Jericho
got
could be a little
out.
ham-fisted at times, but it wasn't. I don't think it happened last night.
I think he can get too ham-fisted when he thinks that that's what is. When he thinks that there's a comedic element required of him, instead of doing subtle comedy, he does over-the-top comedy. But when it calls for him to be intense or something like that, he's very good about it. Like, he had I think he talks about in his book, or he's talked about in an interview, like, when he came back to WWE, I think in 2008, his whole thing was like he would whisper almost in all his promos because everyone was doing the wrestling promos where they're yelling, you know, I'm going to kick your ass, yada, yada. And he just was very, very quiet and very calculated. And he spoke like this. And it made the people draw him in and listen. He pulled that out again last night. Like, he's a master craftsman, even though we've kind of had a little bit of issues about how he's been utilized. But this is the perfect way to use a legend like Chris Jericho to elevate Daniel Garcia. And Garcia's got something, man. There's an element of greatness inside him that I think you saw it last night. And if I'm Tony Khan, I'm like, okay, he's got it. I can give this dude a position because this was if you're Daniel Garcia and they come up and they say, hey, you're going to lead off this show, this might be the most watched episode of Dynamite we've ever had.
Yeah, it had over 1 million viewers for sure.
And so, hey, this thing is going to get started with you. So I hope you're ready. Yeah. And then to be put in that position and then to just deliver a home run like that, like, I felt so good about Garcia. And this is going to be, however this story unfolds, if it's Garcia stays with Jericho, if he joins Blackpool Combat Club, if he strikes out on his own, I'm invested in this 100%.
I kind of feel like at this point he might go out on his own because, you know, he's like, oh, Danielson's my hero versus my mentor. You know, he may just be like, fuck it. I mean, I love both of y'all, but I'm going to do me.
Yeah.
Which I think could be the right angle.
If they're going to run with this divorced parent angle, then yeah, that's the way to do it. You're right.
Right.
Both parents accept that this person needs to go out on their own. So
yeah. Well, let's move in to the actual first match of the night. We had Dax Harwood versus Jay Lethal. Banger.
It's pro wrestling.
Yeah, man.
They did pro wrestling for 15 minutes. That's all it is. Chops.
Moves, ever-loving shit out of each other.
Yeah, those things sounded like hand grenades, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Dax, they said it in commentary, he's a heavy hitter. Got heavy hands and just chopping. And you know how I feel about Jay Lethal. Like, I'm glad he got a win last night because, dude, he gets beat every time he's on television. But perfect way to protect him, you know. Dax gets beat with a roll-up. And that's the way to go. I don't think that was the wrong call at all because I think established single superstars I'd say superstar shit. I got to get it. This is a WWE. Established single professional wrestlers should always be established tag team wrestlers in a one-on-one match. Because that's part of why they're in a tag team, right? Dax is used to having Cash by his side, tagging out all this stuff. And, conversely, I think if you just team up two established superstars, they should always lose to an established tag team. Because, again, the tag team is used to working as a unit, and they have the advantage in those type of matches. So it was great. Like people have tweeted out, Dax is like slowly a sleeper contender for Wrestler of the Year. Just match after match. He's just awesome. And then, I texted you when this happened, the reveal of Motor City Machine Guns. Holy shit. Talk about 16-year-old Patrick coming out in me and just fucking getting excited as shit.
Wilding out.
I was sitting there. I was like, oh shit, it's them. Like, I love Chris Sabin. I love Alex Shelley. If you were to have a time machine and you could put those guys from 10 years ago into AEW now, they would be they'd be just as big as the Young Bucks. They'd be just as big as FTR. I mean, the amount of shit that people have stolen from Alex Shelley just in terms of in the ring. You want to talk about influential. That guy's on a short list of most influential people of his generation. Chris Sabin's awesome. This has to make me think, though, that they've seen all they want to see out of Satnam.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, like, they haven't given him a ton of opportunities to work, but he hasn't done anything to be exciting at all when he has been in the ring. So I'm like you. I do feel like this was probably kind of like a Hail Mary, like, oh, we got to figure this shit out real quick.
It could have been like, hey, if we can't get these guys or if we can't find somebody that has a little bit of history with Lethal here, then we can always fall back on Satnam and Sanjay. But, I mean, Sanjay is obviously he has a very big backstage role in AEW. His in-ring career is pretty much done at this point. He's been sporadic here and there, but I think the way they're using him now as a quasi-manager is about the best way you can do it. Hopefully we still get the Wardlow powerbombing Satnam spot.
Yeah.
The only thing that's a little bit weird, and I don't think it'll be weird when they do the match, but Sabin and Shelley are pretty big baby faces in Impact right now. So to have them come over to AEW and align themselves with a heel, I think you probably see something in the match where Lethal does something dastardly and Sabin and Shelley, maybe either they walk out or Lethal tries to turn on them and they pop him and then Lethal eats the pin and then you see like a Wardlow and FTR and Motor City Machine Guns all standing in the ring together, raising their hands up. A little feel-good moment, something like that probably.
Yeah. Maybe that's when you get the Wardlow, Satnam saying power bomb. Like maybe Satnam comes out and tries to save the day or whatever.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of little stuff like that. So
next up was a backstage segment, Thunder Rosa with Tony Schiavone, and it was a shocker to me. There hadn't been any reports on anything happening because when Punk came out a few months back and said he was gonna take some time off for an injury, we knew that. We knew he was injured. There'd been a bunch of reports and this, that, and the other. Nothing had come out about Thunder Rosa, and so she comes out and says she's gonna give the title up for now, and there'll be an interim belt holder, and she's injured, and she'll be back, and she's crying and carrying on, and then there's rumors today that maybe she's not injured.
Yeah, maybe she got suspended based off something. Maybe she is really hurt. Whatever you believe, you can find a report that goes with what you're saying. It was a backstage segment, pre-recorded, probably because, like we've talked about, Thunder Rosa is not the strongest in-ring, so you want to try to protect her as much as possible when she's on the mic. So you shoot it backstage, and if it's not good, you can do another take, coach her up. This women's division needs something, though. And so now, I think we had speculated before even the injury that we thought it was going to be a four-way at All Out. Whether that was the plan or not, I don't know, because they were advertising Toni Storm versus Thunder Rosa, one-on-one match. Now, obviously, we have this 4-way for the interim belt. We got Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker, Hikaru Shida. It was nice to see her. She's kind of inserted into this match. So I guess whoever wins this match is eventually down the road is going to have a unification match with Thunder Rosa. So we'll see how this goes. I think you know how I feel about this and who I think needs to go over.
I think it's going to be Jamie Hayter if it were up to you.
Well, here's what. So we talked about this too. So if you were going to do Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm anyway, if this supposed injury / suspension, whatever the hell it is, doesn't happen, I think what you might see at the pay-per-view is maybe kind of hot shot this title, or hot potato this title around a little bit. I could see a scenario where Toni Storm gets shit canned out of the ring. Hayter hits her finisher on Shida. She's about to make the pin and get the win on Shida. Britt Baker shit cans Hayter. She steals the win, steals the title. You've protected Toni. You've put the belt on Britt, because Britt is kind of the biggest star of that division. Particularly when it comes to her charisma and her mic work. I mean, she's kind of really head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, I turned to my son last night and I said, I think I might be coming around on Britt Baker a little bit, because I notoriously have hated Britt Baker for a while. But she's done a lot of development in her mic skills and stuff, and that was the thing that turned me off on her in the very beginning. So I'm slowly coming around on her. I mean, and the women's division does need a shot in the arm, so I mean, maybe they put it back on her.
So you put it back on her. Then you can do Britt and Toni. You have obviously Jamie Hayter out there who feels slighted. You have Jamie come into the match. She interferes, costs Britt the title. Then you've put the belt on Toni. You can go back around and do the Toni versus Thunder. They're both champions now, and you unify that. And then you've built up this story of Jamie and Britt now have a feud. Now you got 2 pretty hot women's feuds that you can kind of capitalize on and try to get this thing going, as opposed to just having one. And we I don't even know if we've talked about this on the podcast yet. There's rumors about All Elite Women, which is a straight women's program, coming up at some point. So then hopefully maybe some of this momentum carries into that show, and you have a show dedicated solely to the women. You try to get some angles that catch fire on that show. Maybe they bleed over. The good ones bleed over into Dynamite or Rampage, and you try to give this division the uplift. It's never been about the talent in this division. I think that's what's been the misconception. This division is talented. It has talented wrestlers in it. It just has nothing going for it in terms of storylines. Yeah. And that's what drives business. It's not the in-ring work is cool, and people like me, I'm an outlier in that I really gravitate towards the in-ring work. But a lot of wrestling fans need those stories. They need those angles and the characters that they can really sink their teeth into. And so you're doing these women a complete disservice when you don't put them in any kind of position to succeed, where you're just kind of giving them out there and like, okay, we don't really have anything for you, so just kind of go out there and have a match. Well, you're not doing that to the guys, so don't do it to the women.
Yeah. Let's move on, because we still got a whole bunch of stuff to try to squeeze in. So the next thing on the list is probably my least favorite segment from the night. It was Colton Gunn versus his dad, Billy Gunn. The only real upside that I'll say about this was that they kept it pretty short because they knew that they couldn't spend a lot of time on it because people weren't going to be super invested in this. I mean, it was an interesting angle, father versus son. Son gets the cheap shot on his dad at the end. They accept the cards from Stokely. So they're officially a part of whatever he's going to be doing moving forward, which, we've speculated on. So overall, it was fine. Just my least favorite part of the night. Could have lived without it. If you were a first-time viewer tuning in because you wanted to see Moxley versus Punk, and you saw this was the first thing you saw, you're like, this isn't great. But, otherwise, the show was fantastic. But this one just didn't have as much for me as what I thought probably should have been in the show.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I'm in on the Gun Club. I'm in on the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. As stupid as all this is, I eat it up. That fucking pop for the Acclaimed at the beginning was humongous.
Yeah, and his raps were fucking funny as shit last night too.
Yeah. But I mean, again, he references the talent meeting line and it gets crickets. Why? Because like nobody really cares, man. Like we just want to see good wrestling. So like, but yeah, the rest of the raps were awesome, and you know we've talked about all the time on this podcast. Those two guys, Bowens and Caster, every single opportunity they've gotten, they've knocked it out of the park. They've put themselves in this position to where, I mean, they feel like, I don't think they'll beat Swerve and Lee, but they feel like they belong in that match against those two.
Yeah, and it comes up after the Britt Baker match, but Swerve in Our Glory did talk to the Acclaim backstage and offered him a title shot.
Yeah, and so will that happen at All Out? I don't know. I don't know if it got settled when it was going to happen.
I think it's Friday night. I could be wrong.
Okay, so it could be Friday night. So like again, like and they even mentioned in the promo, they're a homegrown AEW talent. They started out on Dark. Slowly but surely, every single week, that entrance got over, to now, that Acclaim music hits one of the biggest pops of the night. The Scissor Me Daddy Ass has taken off. It's so stupid, but it's stupid in like such a refreshing kind of way. Like we talk about all the time, wrestling's a variety show. So you get the serious stuff with Garcia, but you need some lighthearted, just stupid, idiotic stuff. Where you got fucking Billy Gunn and Bowens scissoring and their tongues are out, and it's dumb, but like who cares? People love it, and I love it, so I eat all this up. Good for the Gun Club. I think they have a ton of potential. Whatever Stokely is cooking up, it's cool to have them be a part of it. Although I will say we've speculated. You know, Stokely put out that Twitter picture, and we thought it had 4 empty slots in it. The Stokely picture he tweeted last night looked like there were 2 more empty spots. So we have Moriarty, we have Paige. The other picture was Austin and Colton together. And then the original picture, it looked like there were 4 blank spots. Now it looks like there's 5 blank spots.
Yeah.
Could that be an MJF and CM Punk? I don't know. Could it be somebody? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know.
If MJF is involved in some way.
You would have to think. You have to, because somebody has to be the leader of that group.
Yeah.
It's going to be a main event level player. It's not going to be a mid-carder that's going to emerge as the leader. It's going to be one of the top 5 or 6 guys in the company.
Yeah.
And so he makes the most sense. We'll see what happens.
So moving on to next up, we'll touch on this real quick. We've touched on the women's division a little bit, but Britt Baker versus Kylan King. I mean, in the 2 or 3 chances we've seen Kylan King on TV, she's a pretty solid worker. And her ring gear looks cool. I think the colors, work nicely. And I don't know. I feel like she's pretty good in the ring. Like maybe we'll start seeing a little bit more of her. She's only had, I think her record was like 2-2, and a couple of those matches I'm sure were dark. So, didn't really do anything to advance the story because Britt gets a pretty quick win. But, a nice, solid, quick match. Boom, bing, get out of there. And then went to the Swerve in Our Glory up next. So, I don't have too many thoughts on it other than, like, I feel like we'll probably see a little bit more of her moving forward. And, what do you got on it?
That match only served one purpose, and that was after the fact. You got to bring Tony out there. You got to have her get beat down so that Sheeta can come in and make the save so that you've established everybody that's in this match. That's all it is. It was cool to see Sheeta. She's so, we talk about underutilized people all the time. She's definitely up there. So let's, it would be a shocker to me if she emerges from All Out as the women's champion. But maybe, as going forward, maybe they'll have something for her.
Yeah. So then let's spend a little time on Punk versus Moxley. I assumed, I guess, naively that this would be the main event. And they were doing the Swerve in Our Glory and Acclaim thing backstage, and they're like, up next, CM Punk versus Jon Moxley. I was like, what the fuck is happening? Because this is like 8:10. I was like, what are we doing here? And then it gets into the match. I get a text from Eddie Forsyth, friend of the show. And he just said, "What the hell just happened?" And I just texted back. I was like, "I have no fucking idea." Like, boom. It was almost a squash match. Punk versus
It wasn't
Moxley.
almost. It was.
I mean, it was, what, 3 minutes? 4 minutes?
Yeah, somebody tweeted out that the Road to Cleveland video package that they put on YouTube, where it had all the like interviews with Moxley and Punk, was longer than the actual match itself.
I mean, hell, Moxley's entrance was probably longer than the fucking match because, I mean, he, got in there, foot thing happens, he grabs it, twists it, fucking hits him with the hammer and anvil, paradigm shift, like twice, ring the bell.
Yep.
Get the belt. I mean, did you see it playing out that way, or did you think...
I didn't. I knew something was going to come. And when I saw the foot thing happen, and he started hitting him with the elbows, I'm like, oh, they're going to do it. They're gonna just beat the shit out of him.
Yeah. I mean, when he put the hammer and anvil on him that quickly, I was like, this is over.
But it makes sense on so many levels, right? So let's kind of break this down. It makes sense on a level in front of the camera, just kayfabe wise, because Jon Moxley right now is at the top of his game. He has been having match after match after match against all comers. He's beat Danielson. I think he's only lost 4 matches in his entire AEW career.
Yeah,
he's the most protected guy in the company. Nobody beats him clean. And he is the heart and soul of AEW. And he feels kind of unbeatable, as he should. And so what has been the story of CM Punk since he's come in there? If you'll remember, go back to his match against Darby. What's one of the first things he said in the promo? I'm coming back to see if I can hang with these guys. Turns out, you can beat those kind of lower level guys, but you really can't hang with the big guys. And this is his first main event outside of the MJF stuff. But again, MJF is not presented as a great, badass, in-ring wrestler. MJF is presented as a diabolical, maniacal, manipulative psychopath who will do whatever it takes to win, right? That was the whole thing against Punk. Moxley is not that. Moxley is the fucking man. He's the badass. He's a wrestler. He's going to kick your ass. And so, yeah, Punk, the story is Punk can't hang with that guy. Like, he's brittle. He's older. You get in the ring with me, I stomp you in 4 minutes. Again, we've planted the seeds for a heel turn. And so if we have all this backstage commotion that all the smart fans have picked up on, Punk's an asshole. Punk's not helping out these young guys like what he said. We planted all them sayings. Punk got a little bit of booze last night. We need something in front of the camera to set up a potential heel turn. And so now the heel turn could be motivated from, oh my God, I came back thinking I could hang. I can't hang. Therefore, I need to kind of skirt the rules or cheat or get into my old school diabolical, maniacal ways like I did in Ring of Honor to get ahead of these guys.
So I've seen some things online today from people that thought the booking was shit and they shouldn't have done that and this, that, and the other. And I'm glad I didn't pay $50 for that.
But that's why you didn't pay $50. That's why they put it on Dynamite, though.
Right.
So that's a stupid argument. They didn't make you pay $50
That's true.
for it.
So do you think they'll, like, if they're still going to do this in the main event, which all signs are pointing that way, for All Out, do they just have a banger of a match and still let Moxley come out the victor? And then that sets up the Punk heel turn? I mean, where are you thinking?
So
Let Punk turn heel in fucking Chicago. I mean, in the show with him.
yeah, but just because he turns heel in Chicago and if he gets cheered in Chicago because of it, which depending on how bad he turns heel, that's not, those Chicago fans might boo him. They'll like Moxley too. It won't be fully boos, but like wherever he goes to next, he'll get booed.
Yeah.
And the commentary team is going to put it over that, oh my God, CM Punk, what the hell is he doing? Like, you're going to have to do some kind of schmoz finish here at All Out. That doesn't mean that they can't tell a good story. And I guess that's what it sort of irritates me when people were like, oh my God, that's like, what are we doing? Because we're like in the middle of this story. Like, let's see how it plays out. Now we're critical of how AEW goes about doing things sometimes, but we're critical because we're like, oh, we can see what they're doing, but there might have been a better way to do it. Or this isn't accomplishing what they're trying to accomplish. And, you know, we fantasy book stuff, you know, on this podcast from time to time, but also like...
I mean, I just did it.
Yeah, but like, they don't have to follow what we're doing. Like, we're just two fans that like, we're just, you know, talking shit on a podcast, you know what I mean? Like, so sometimes these fans, wrestling fans, have gotten to this point where they'd rather be right or in the know than be entertained.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing that only exists in pro wrestling. Doesn't happen in sports. Doesn't happen in television or movies. All those fans are like, oh my God, it's so entertaining. This would be like turning off a movie an hour way through and being like, well, this is shit. Like, you'd watch the whole movie and then decide that it was shit or you didn't like the way it was going. Like, this is a weird thing to be critical of. So, yeah, with Punk, I think you have to, you know, you can't sell me on the fact that he can beat Moxley straight up.
Yeah, so maybe he does get the win by ill-gotten gains.
Somebody helps him.
MJF.
Somebody comes out to screw Hangman, or to screw Moxley. We have this Hangman thing that's floating out here. Does Hangman come in trying to fuck over Punk? Accidentally hits Moxley.
I mean,
Punk rolls him up.
Maybe. I don't know if I see Hangman fucking shit up though. I don't know. It doesn't seem like his kind of deal.
But I like being in this position where I'm like, I don't know what the fuck. I didn't expect that last night.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen at All Out. This is fun. This is interesting.
Yeah.
So like, I'm just kind of here for the ride. I mean, I have ideas about what I think they might do, or, you know, I think I've been saying for months, the money's in a heel Punk turn, or a Punk heel turn. And all signs seem to be pointing that's the direction they're going to go. Because again, if they were going to keep Punk as a babyface, you don't have him be squashed. What you do is you have him wrestle a 10-15 minute match, then the foot injury hits him, and then Punk tries to be the hero and stay out, but he can't fight off Moxley that way because he's not 100%. You don't have Moxley run through the guy the way he did.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But kudos to Moxley should be the first two-time AEW champion.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it wasn't until, you know, when AEW started, yeah, they had Jericho, yeah, they had Omega and the Bucks, but people didn't really know what AEW was. They were like, is this a legit company or not?
The general population didn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
it wasn't until Double or Nothing, when Moxley shows up at the end, that they were like, holy shit, okay, this is legit, because Moxley had been a huge star in the biggest wrestling company of all time. And so he is someone that you should hitch your wagon to. He's over his shit. People love him. He's good on the mic. And again, everything he said in that promo 2 weeks ago came true, because this isn't WWE where he, you know, Punk was on the mic and he was like, you know, what you do on that microphone don't mean shit here. And turns out it doesn't. You know, Punk calls himself the best in the world. He just got his ass beat in 3 minutes. So
best in the world, my ass, as Moxley said later.
Right. Again, setting up a heel turn. The tea leaves have been there.
Yeah, I mean, he teased the turn last week when he kept going back to that. Tell me when I'm lying.
You even got that.
That's a classic. Tell me. That's an arc.
Right. You even got that beautiful shot. And I don't know if you picked up on it, but the camera as CM Punk is getting helped out to the back. Excuse me. He's on the ramp. And he looks back, and he's looking at all the people chant Moxley's name, and he's just taking it in. And that's the kind of shit that you can use in a video package when he talks about fueling this stuff. Like, this is how you tell stories.
Yeah.
And also, he's had 7 years to think about this stuff. That was another thing that was making me kind of, like, I would read some of the online comments, and people would be like, oh, well, they're not thinking about working the dirt sheets like this. Like, who would think that way? They're like, well, if you had 7 years to think about something,
yeah,
like somebody wrote Inception, you know what I mean? Somebody wrote The Godfather. Like, just because it's never been done this kind of way in pro wrestling doesn't mean it can't reach the same kind of artistic heights that other sort of art forms hit. Like, it's not unusual for people to put this much level of detail into a story. It happens all the time. Harry Potter, somebody wrote that. How fucking deep and loaded with metaphor and shit is Harry Potter, you know?
Yeah, 7 books worth.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be an exciting pay-per-view, I think. You know, will be the biggest one to date. I mean, they've got the angle there with Moxley and Punk.
It'll be hard to beat last year's All Out, because last year's All Out you had the rumors of Danielson and Cole joining. But in terms of just like, I don't know what the fuck is gonna happen.
Yeah, and everybody's on edge about if MJF comes back now, like if it's his time to come. Like, I mean, when else are you gonna do it unless you do it in New York in the middle of September?
Yeah, so I mean,
it's either at All Out or New York, or you fucking blew it.
Yeah, or you know, maybe we all got worked and this wasn't a work. Maybe it was a shoot. Maybe he ain't coming back. So who knows? But like, it's an exciting time, and I wish sometimes wrestling fans wouldn't be so obsessed with just trying to figure out what happens next. Just sort of sit back. Sometimes you just have to sit back and be like, okay, I've been impressed up to this point. I'm in the hands of good storytellers. Let's just see where this goes. And if it turns out it goes to a shit place, we'll criticize it here on the podcast. But for right now, I'm excited. I have no idea what's going to happen, and this is a fun place to be in.
Yeah. Well, let's move along. We still got a few things to go before we get out of here. Christian Cage promo was next. Just more good shit from Christian. I mean, you've said it before several times. Like, he's putting on a hell of a performance as a heel right now. It's some of his best work. He's
tried everything he can to get Jungle Boy over. He keeps calling him Jack. So hopefully we get a Jack Perry and we get away from this Jungle Boy thing. I think the Jack Perry stuff should have happened before the pay-per-view. But I mean, again, yeah, he's done everything to try to get Jungle Boy over. I'm not sold that Jungle Boy is a main eventer. He's got all the talent in the world inside the ring, but we haven't seen anything else. You know, the conviction that some of these other talents in AEW have. He's just not there yet. Probably still going to be a pretty good match. You know, you would imagine Luchasaurus gets involved somehow. But you know, the angle is not as hot as it could have been. Yeah. because it was on fire there for a few weeks.
I think they started it a little too early. Trying to, you know, they gave it too much time, and it got a little boring. And so now they got to ramp it back up. I figure we'll see some shit pop off next Wednesday.
Yeah.
They haven't teased it or announced it, but I figure something will pop off Wednesday before the pay-per-view. So next up, I mean, it was just promo, basically, leading up to the main event. We had Ricky Starks, fucking fire.
Superstar.
Team Ricky. We are a Team Ricky podcast.
Somebody tweeted, I think it was Baron Corbin or Happy Corbin or something. He just had a tweet that just said, "This dude is money." And somebody looked at the time it was tweeted, and it coincided with like the same exact time that Ricky was on television. Like, Ricky is just, again, same with Garcia, believability, intensity. He got sympathy. That's a big thing for a babyface, to get sympathy from the crowd, but he's not backing down from a fight. That's the important thing. Babyfaces can't back down from fights. That's kind of what the big crux of the argument was against CM Punk calling out Hangman and Hangman not showing up. Babyfaces cannot be presented as cowards because people don't get behind cowards. But here's Ricky. He's a man that's been slighted by a dude that he thought was his brother, and now he's out for revenge.
Yeah, the whole neck angle. I had forgotten that he broke his neck.
Yeah.
He was out for a minute.
And he's literally looking in the camera like he's on the verge of tears.
Yeah.
And then he has managed to have... He has a charisma, and he has an intensity to his promos a la like a Ric Flair. But unlike Ric Flair, he has a likability factor to him, where he just naturally, in the way that people naturally wanted to root against Flair because he was kind of an asshole, Ricky's kind of got that same style as Flair, with that, like, you know, the leather pants and the shirt without the collared shirt without a shirt underneath. But yet there's just something about him that's magnetic that makes you want to root for him. So he's kind of got the best of both worlds. He's got star written all over him. When we get out of All Out, it's time to put the rocket on this dude and push him up to the top of the card.
Yeah.
We can't keep... This dude is not... He's not a mid-carder. This is one of the top 5 guys on the. This is the dude that you put in the front of the posters. He should be up there with the Moxleys and the Danielsons and the Punks. He's got all of that talent, and I mean, he's absolute. That's what
right.
that's his nickname. The nickname's there for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, he did get me, though, man. I was like, damn, I forgot about the neck thing. He talked about Hobbs, cheap shotting him in the neck. I was like, oh, shit, that's just good storytelling. Like,
Pulling you in, telling you a story.
yeah. I felt for him in that one. I was like, God damn.
And that's all. And you want to see Powerhouse get his comeuppance.
Yeah.
And that now I think we both would have liked to seen this build be a little bit different. I don't think really anything has been done to elevate Powerhouse whatsoever. He kind of did the turn, and then that was it. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more back and forth. But as the way it was presented last night, I mean, you can't ask Ricky to do anything else than what he did. It was perfect.
Yeah. He talked about the disillusion of, I think that's the right word, of Team Taz, that hurt his feelings. I mean, he didn't say hurt his feelings, but he was upset about that. And then I don't know, man. It was. I don't expect anything less out of Ricky Hobbs, or I don't expect anything less out of Ricky Starks at this point. But I don't know. It's just top to bottom, fucking hot for me last night. It was awesome.
And it didn't go too long. It was 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Get in, get out. The old screenwriting thing. You come in late, you get out early. That's what you do with these things.
Yeah. So next up, one last promo. We had 3 in a row. We had Moxley backstage. This was the best in the world my ass moment. Anytime you give Jon Moxley a mic, there's probably going to be a little fire.
That's all you got to do. He's intense. He's the champ. Yeah, I mean, everything we talk about every other babyface, fire, intensity, conviction, believability, he's got all of it. That's why he's the man in AEW, and that's why he's the sole champion right now. Yeah.
He didn't say, hey, we're going to do this again, but everything today online says they're going Punk and Mox. Because last night I was like, what the fuck happens next? It didn't, I kind of thought maybe they'll do the rematch, but I was like, maybe they won't. I was like, maybe there was a reason why they did this as a squash match so fast in the middle of the show. I had a lot of thoughts on it last night, but now that I'm kind of got a little distance on it, it all makes a little sense. But yeah, you just give him the mic right before the fucking main event. Smart move, you got it. You got the eyeballs, everybody. At this point, what else are they going to do?
All right. So
yeah. So then into the main event, had the Death Triangle versus Will Ospreay and Aussie Open, United Empire total. Ospreay's a dude that I only got to recently know about really from the New Japan crossover with AEW. Love this fucking guy. They put on a hell of a main event last night. There were a couple different times, and then there was the opening with Rey Fenix. That whole first minute. It was super choreographed. Some people were going to be like, oh, yeah, it was, Spot Fest or whatever. But it was fucking awesome. Everybody was hyped. Crowd was into it. And then there was another point later where there was about a minute exchange between Pac and Ospreay. Just fucking beautiful wrestling. Nonstop for a minute. Just going. And there were, I told you there was the two off the top events that I thought were brilliant last night. The tornado from Ospreay on one end of the ring, on the other end of the ring, Pac off of the ring, the pole on the side. Just the balance that shit took. And then he got his ass whipped by Kip Sabian.
Yeah, which a good payoff to the Kip Sabian stuff. Yeah. And that gives, that protects Death Triangle because now there was an outside interference. Obviously going to set up an angle between Pac and Kip Sabian. Kip Sabian, man, just dedicated to the gimmick. Yeah. Been doing it. He's been in the background for, months at this point. Yeah. Or I guess maybe it's not been him. Who knows? That's the perfect thing about this gimmick. It's just a box. Could have been anybody.
Yeah, when they cut to it and they showed, Pac staring at him last night, I looked at the guy. I was like, that ain't Kip Sabian. Because this dude looked about 5'7", about my height. And I was like, Kip Sabian is much taller, much more slender than that dude. I was like,
Yeah.
that is not Kip Sabian.
Yeah.
And then boom, he gets jumped from behind.
Yeah.
Perfect setup.
Kip Sabian rocking the blonde hair with the black facial hair.
Yeah.
That's a choice. That's a look.
That's a choice.
Looks good on him. He's a handsome dude, but like that's, you're leaning into the heel thing at that point. But yeah, this match, I mean, Ospreay, just one of the best in the entire world. And like what you brought up at the beginning about people feeling it might be too choreographed. I think there's a line, but they didn't cross that line, not to me. But also I get kind of irritated too about the choreographed stuff because it's like all these Marvel movies that people fawn over, at the end, all those fight scenes look like what Rey Fenix and Will Ospreay were doing in the ring, except what's impressive about what they're doing is it's live one take, and it's real. Ain't no CGI, ain't no stunt doubles. These dudes are doing it.
They're just getting it.
And so, like, sometimes you just have to accept that things evolve. They go into the modern day and age. If people were just strictly wrestling the way they did in 1975, people would be like, this shit's boring because we've just seen too much. And, you have the old heads like the Cornettes and the, whoever out there talking, they'll shit all over this stuff. But, like, wrestling has moved past them. And this is the future. Like I said, I think Phoenix and Ospreay, they walked that line very elegantly. They didn't feel too forced, too choreographed. There is sometimes where it gets stupid, where like a guy just stands up and he's standing there for fucking 30 seconds waiting for the dude to get up. That shit is stupid.
Sure.
But there was none of that. It was boom, 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 boom. Like, and Ospreay's he's one of the best. And even like taking the Hurricane Rana off the top and landing on your feet. I don't think people realize how much athleticism that takes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of one. Everything, the look about him, he has managed to kind of get a little bit more stiff in his style. His kicks, his elbows. He didn't pull it out last night, but that running back elbow that he does as a finisher that you can find online, I forget what he calls it, but like that thing's just beautiful and looks brutal. I don't know what his New Japan contract is. I really hope at some point he comes over here to the States full time because I would love to see him on television.
He needs a bigger
every single
audience,
week.
yeah. No doubt. I mean, I've gushed about him over and over and over again, and like I was a little shocked at first because I was like, they got to put Death Triangle over. Why are you going to put over a team that's not even on your fucking promotion? But now I've learned a little more about he and Kenny, so it does make sense to give them an opportunity to kind of face
and
off.
then that's what you're trying to build to. You want that. You want Kenny and Ospreay to be in the ring at the same time in front of a hot Chicago crowd. Try to pop the ratings on the television. Try to sell some more tickets if it's not already sold out. Like that's what you need. Death Triangle can, as bad as it is, they can eat that loss, right? Because again, like we talked about with Sabian's presence in the match, you end up protecting Pac. You protect the Lucha Bros, who at any point they can just get their heat back. Right, they're one of the best tag teams in the world.
Solid.
Yeah, so this was the right call to get where you want to get. And then Omega coming out to stare down them as we go to Black. Like, make you want to watch next week. Those two teams are gonna rip each other apart, and it's gonna be awesome to watch.
Yeah, man, should be fun. The whole trios thing is really interesting to me. Like, at first I was like, we don't need another fucking title, but I don't know, man. Some of these teams are pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, and like I mean, if it's good, it's good. If it's not, then it's not. I don't really care about having too many titles. Again, I don't. There are some complaints that the internet wrestling community has that I'm like, this is only a complaint if it's bad. If it works out good, then it's okay.
I kind of wish they would do it a thing, though, where it's like 3 single wrestlers made a team. And it's not like 2 of the 3 of you are already in a tag team. Because then you're like, oh, well, we could be in a tag team title hunt. Or, oh, we could be in a trios title hunt. I kind of feel like it might be a little more effective if they were all single individual wrestlers. But that would also be difficult, too, at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean, well, you only have like Lucha Bros and Pac are kind of a loose faction, right? And then you have people like House of Black who are presented as a 3-man team.
Yeah.
Same with like Best Friends. You kind of have Chuck and Trent are the tag team, and OC is kind of the single star. So like they're a loose sort of faction. And so it's good to have those little mix and matches. And yeah, I mean, it seems like we're gearing up towards I guess we're going to do Dark Order and probably Kenny and the Bucks. I think that's both of our predictions for All Out. Probably Dark Order with Hangman, I would guess.
Hangman would be the angle because you got former friends. You know, a couple of them tried to make amends recently with him.
Yeah.
That's probably the angle you're going for.
And
there.
I don't think that just because of what Punk did that makes you need to change your plans.
Yeah.
Because you can always revisit Punk. As soon as you put Punk and Hangman in a ring together, whenever you do it, it's going to be a hot angle because of what Punk did.
Yeah.
That's why people were like, oh, Punk was burying Hangman. It's like, well, Hangman hasn't done anything, and then for a week, he was the most talked about thing in AEW. So, like, maybe we're just we're reading a little bit too much into it.
Yeah.
All Out, though, should be exciting. You know, the next stop, they're in Chicago for Dynamite, and they stay there for the whole week. So we're going to see some hot crowds, some good in-ring action.
Yeah, because they'll do Rampage Live Friday night, right?
I think so, yeah.
And you mentioned a week or so ago, usually when they do Rampage Live, it's pretty hot.
Yep.
No need to waste any matches for that night. So I say let's wrap it up. I'm going to say let's skip Done Up real good this week because, quite frankly, A, I haven't thought of anything, but B, this fucking show was done up real good. This was a top-notch Wednesday night show for me.
Yeah, I mean, this is what AEW, when it's cooking with fire and cooking with grease, this is what it does. It's always given you the fantastic in-ring work, and now it's got some storylines and some direction to boot, and that's all you can ask for it. So, like we've talked about, the thing is, it's never been boring. These shows at times have been like, I don't know what we're doing. Like, it's kind of weird, but they always throw stuff out there where where it's not dull entertainment, but now it has an unpredictability factor to it, which is what, when you talk about the best eras of wrestling, you talk about the Attitude Era, it was that unpredictability of it, right? You're like, oh, fucking Stone Cold might come down in a beer truck, spray the whole ring. Who knows what the fuck's going to happen, right? Makes you want to tune in. And so, yeah, this is why pro wrestling has been a flourishing art form for 100 years. And as long as there's people still willing to watch it, it's going to be a thing long past when you and I are done with this podcast, whenever that is. So
yeah. Well, man, we say this every week. We appreciate y'all listening to us. It'd mean a lot to us if you don't already. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Alabama Slam Pod. We only have one Apple Podcast review right now. It would be awesome if you could go and leave us 5 stars and just a quick blurb. Anything helps get it helps move us up the ratings and shit like that and get us in front of more eyeballs. If you want an Alabama Slam t-shirt or a coffee mug or a sticker, go to tpublic.com. You can search for either Alabama Slam or search for the Alabama Take, which is our home site. There's t-shirts there's t-shirts that just say the Alabama Take, and there's t-shirts for our sister podcast over at Taking It Down, and there's a few other podcasts that are fixing to come out on the network. Can't say too much more about right now, but be on the lookout for those. And share us with your friends, man. Just that would be helpful, and we'd really appreciate that. Just if you see a post online, fucking retweet it or hit share if you're on Facebook or whatever. If you see it, we don't have an actual Facebook page, but we do promote through the Alabama Take because we already had quite a bit of people that follow the site over there. So we said, fuck it, we're not starting a new page. There's no point in it. So we really appreciate you guys listening. And I think, coming off this one, I don't expect there to be much of a letdown next week. I think Wednesday night will be badass. I think Friday night we'll probably see, I don't want to say completely badass because there'll be at least one sleeper probably on Rampage. And then Sunday night, all out, baby.
We'll be in for a 4.5 hour extravaganza. with the main event of who knows what at this point. It's we're a week away, and the card's not even locked up yet, so it should be fun and entertaining, and we'll be here to break it all down.
We'll see y'all next week.
Later, guys.